Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I believe we are the last session of the day, so we really appreciate that you're here. We're going to go ahead and get started just to get juices flowing. I won't make you stand this time, but if you could please raise your hand if you have ever tried to gain access to a limited distribution drug or medication through the what's called a request for proposal process, and you felt like you were trying to solve a riddle wrapped in a mystery, wrapped in a PDF, or maybe an Excel. Anyone? Me? Am I the only one? Okay. And then please keep your hand raised if you've ever found it difficult to differentiate yourself or your pharmacy in a sea of sameness, right? It's very difficult. So what if I told you there was a system that can capture the data of all the great work that your staff, clinical or non-clinical, does every single day, and it puts it into a format that could be leveraged to tell a story when it comes time to fill out that RFP? That'd be great, right? That would be awesome. So let's get started. So for those of you that I have not met yet, and I've met a lot of people because I talk a lot, my name is Christen Roy. I am a pharmacist by training. I have years of experience with specialty pharmacy. I won't tell you how many. I started as a staff pharmacist and moved into leadership roles. And then I actually ended up facing out to some payer customers as well as to pharma. My last role before landing here had me reviewing and approving some RFP responses for a large specialty pharmacy. And so that's where I actually got to pull together, all of the work that I used to do as a staff pharmacist and all the work my staff did, and go, my goodness, this process of pulling together an RFP is quite complex. And it was really hard to pull everything together. And so when I got over here, I am absolutely fortunate to have a role where I'm responsible for the clinical and pharmacy practice direction of ScriptMed Cloud. And I'm not going to spoil the surprise of what we're going to talk about, but they have some phenomenal tools here that, in reflection, would make it much easier for pharmacies to fill out that RFP. So very excited to talk about that. Before we get there, but Ben, could you please share a little bit about your background and your role here at Inovalon?
Absolutely. Great to be here with you today, Kristen. Hi, everyone. My name is Ben Rader. I'm a product manager in Inovalon on our pharmacy team, but I'm the head of our data team here at the pharmacy business unit. I've been working with our pharmacy partners for over a decade to help build clinical patient programs, shape our clinical data strategy, and deliver these LDD programs for our pharmacy partners that we're going to talk about today. Awesome. So glad to be here.
In the interest of time, we won't go through every single bullet here on the agenda, but rest assured, our goal today is to share with you how the tools in ScriptMed Cloud can help make the documentation of the information that's needed as you go through the patient journey, and we're going to do that through the lens of a specific patient named Maya. And so we'll walk through all of that documentation and then how that all rolls up into something called the clinical timeline, which is really the key focus of what really can help with the RFP process. So just to level set, as some of you may know here in this room, as the pipeline for specialty medications continues to grow, it brings with it more and more innovation, which is wonderful. So we're starting to see medications that treat not only the symptoms of diseases, but it starts to look at the root cause. So think about things like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's. We're starting to see disease states that have never been treated before at that level. And so that's wonderful. But what also comes with that is that you're starting to see different routes of administration that are coming to market, or dual, I should say, routes of administration coming to market at the same time. So one topic that was really hot at NASP recently was this idea of specialty and infusion sort of having to come together. And so as we think about that and we think about the pipeline and RFP, those types of questions start to come through as well, which makes it that much more important to demonstrate the patient journey and how the patient is followed through going maybe in between different types of the routes of administration that we talked about. So the combination of newly treated disease states and more complex administration requirements is creating that space where these pharmacies are having to get a little bit more creative about their process approach. On the right here, you see a recent drug trials article chart that's demonstrating that a third of the over 300 medications that are limited distribution today fall into what's considered an exclusive limited distribution network, meaning only one pharmacy can distribute that medication. And then another third falls into what's called an ultra network, meaning only 2 to 4 pharmacies can distribute that medication. So with 2/3 of the 300 medications sitting in these very small network sizes, that means that the competition that these pharmacies face when they fill out these RFPs is very, very real. So back to, what if we could show you a different way? So here at Inovalon, we believe that we have the tools that help pharmacies set themselves apart from the competition. We believe that we can be the technology solution of choice for those pharmacies that in turn can make themselves the pharmacy of choice for their pharmaceutical manufacturer partners. And so we can all work together to bring about a different way of doing the process, which brings about a different conversation. So we know that manufacturers are often looking for 4 key pillars when it comes to differentiating the partners when they look at the RFPs that they receive. How well does the pharmacy manage the patient's journey? They're looking for an adaptable journey, one that allows the pharmacy to meet the patient and the provider where they are, whether that's with clinical expertise or empathy, or whether it's with technology solutions that can keep pace with wherever the patient or the provider are in their journey. Can the pharmacy meet the holistic needs of the patient? Maybe the patient needs a specialty medication, like I said, and an infusion medication. Maybe they need to go back and forth. Maybe they also need mail order medications or retail medications. So how well does that pharmacy support that? Maybe the pharmacy doesn't need to support dispensing those other medications, but they need to have access to visibility across the other medications the patient has. Does the pharmacy have the tools to measure, track, and readily report on key performance indicators that'll be required by the manufacturer's programs? This is the bulk of where you come in, right?
Yeah.
That's great. And lastly, what type of partnership can the manufacturer expect from the pharmacy? So oftentimes when I was working on the RFP responses, the conversation we would have is, this is one RFP for one drug, but how might the pharmacy be set up to support the other drugs that are coming in the pipeline as well? They want to choose a partner that's going to grow with them. And a lot of times it came down to, can the system support that? What's your technology like, and is that going to scale with the rest of their pipeline? So let's meet Maya. I told you, I promised we would meet a patient. So to help illustrate what ScriptMed can do. So this is Maya. She is 19 years old. In the spring, she was diagnosed with a complicated disease state called hereditary angioedema.
Oh, say that 5 times fast, huh?
Yeah, I'll have you do that at the end. There won't be a quiz, so don't worry. I see you sweating a little bit. All we really need to know about hereditary angioedema, and we'll call it HAE going forward, is that it is a genetic disorder. It affects multiple areas of the body, and it's often confused or mistaken for other disorders first. So there's swelling in different areas of the body that can happen. The episodes are irregular, and there's often not a obvious reason for the swelling to happen. It's unpredictable. And so people get misdiagnosed at first, and then another attack happens, and maybe 2 or 3 have to happen, and then there's a diagnosis. So we'll follow Maya as she gets her diagnosis, and she receives some doses, and then she goes off to college, and things change for her, and they get busy, and the pharmacy has to intervene. So this is the clinical timeline. This is what is going to build as the pharmacy does their work. So let's talk a little bit about this journey and how it starts off. So in the spring, Maya has a first episode of abdominal swelling. So she's out there in the world and she's doing things, and she ends up at a hospital and she ends up with abdominal swelling. Eventually, she ends up in June at the pharmacy. And ScriptMed Cloud is connected to DataStream. So can you talk to us a little bit about our connection with DataStream?
Yeah.
So then we can talk a little bit more about how all of that data comes in.
Sure, and I like the way that you kind of framed it here. So with that initial misdiagnosis of appendicitis. So DataStream's a pretty unique product, I think, that we have here at Inovalon that really allows us to take advantage of all the different parts of the healthcare ecosystem that Inovalon touches, right? We are able to tap into the world's largest primary source data set, match on patients within ScriptMed from our larger data set in the aggregate, and pull in a lot of that information that we otherwise wouldn't have had. So when we talk about the misdiagnosis, if she was at a hospital that Inovalon is partnered with, we're able to take that information, and that diagnosis of appendicitis can immediately get put onto the timeline for Maya. We're able to pull in other things like other medications she might be taking, any allergies she might have. Maybe she had labs drawn as well at the hospital. We're able to pull that information and get her complete blood count. Maybe they had a liver function test done. All of that information we're able to pull in through DataStream and provide right there at the point of care for the pharmacist whenever they're looking at Maya, to really get the full picture and the full sense of her journey so far.
Yeah, so that's great. So in the spring, Maya goes to the hospital. She has this abdominal swelling. It gets diagnosed as appendicitis, and then in June she shows up again and she has more swelling, but it's in a different area of her body, and that's when her doctors realize something else might be going on. And so they run a test for a different type, a lab for a different type of protein, and that confirms that she has hereditary angioedema. And so what you're saying is that the ICD-10 for appendicitis, when we pull her into ScriptMed, DataStream pulls in all of this data and it will show the ICD-10 for appendicitis. But then when they change that diagnosis and they say, nope, that's not what it was, they will put in the HAE diagnosis code, and they will have that correlating C1 inhibitor test in there that confirms that.
Yes.
And so that's all starting to build that timeline, even before the pharmacist is even really hitting the scene, right? And then it's pulling in her medication history, it's pulling in her allergy history, like Ben said. And so that very first interaction that Maya has with the pharmacy, instead of it being one of those conversations where you're grilling the patient for what medications do you take, what allergies do you have, she's 19 years old. If she gets a phone call like that, were you busy at 19? I mean, you seem like you're closer to 19. So. Were you busy?
I'm 31 and I still don't know if I'd even be able to give a full med history like that. So
and maybe you're not in a location to give a med history at that time, right? And so instead of that conversation being a grilling interview, it becomes a confirmational conversation, right? So we see here that you have these medications listed, and I think that also gives more confidence to the conversation, right? If I got a phone call like that, it would give me more confidence that the pharmacy was supposed to be calling me. And so that's all pulled in. And now, Maya's medication goes through, we've got the prescription from the doctor, and the pharmacist starts the initial clinical consult. And so that initial clinical consult, we'll talk a little bit, like I said, about Flow Builder later, but it's originally built with ACHC and URAC guidelines in mind, but it can also be disease-specific to the program questions that maybe the manufacturer needs to have for a specific medication. So the pharmacist, when they do that clinical assessment, that also shows up on the timeline as well, correct?
Yeah, all of it's there. It's really becomes that one-stop shop of every little piece of information we've gathered, every data point we've collected with them. It's there, it's visible, it's accessible, right? And it's organized, I think, more important.
That's correct. So I know that this might look a little bit small to some of you, but you can see a little orange piece off to the side here. And it's also building out the future assessments that are going to be needed for Maya as well. So If the program requires maybe a certain assessment at 1 month or a certain assessment at 3 months, and they're different, whoever takes a phone call from Maya, if she calls in between, they can see what's coming up next for her. And so it also helps with one-call resolution should she call near another assessment, and they may want to conduct those at the same time. So if we follow Maya through her journey, she gets her first fill in June, she gets a preventative medication, and then she gets an attack-specific medication. So should she have a breakthrough attack, she'll get that medication at that time too. In July, she refills her preventative medication. She gets a reoccurring assessment, as we would expect, just checking in to see if she's had any side effects and if she's had any attacks. She says she's doing better. It's all good news on that call. That's all documented as well. In August, same thing. But in September, Maya moves away to college. Things get a little bit hectic, and she arrives at college and realizes that she forgot her breakthrough medication, and she's panicking. So she calls and she's escalated. And oftentimes in the RFP, I would have questions about what happens when a patient escalates. Can you demonstrate and show us what happens in an escalation, and where does that information show up? So again, there would be a generation of a clinical escalation, right? That would be different than an assessment that we've just talked about. And that would also show up on the timeline as well.
It will, yeah.
Yeah. And it can show all different, interventions, however the pharmacy wants to build that out to demonstrate what occurred to help Maya get through that crisis. So as you can see, this is an invaluable tool that not only allows the pharmacies to demonstrate value to pharma through the RFP process, but this is helping to drive better clinical decision-making and clinical conversations with the patients. It's leaving little breadcrumbs, if you will, for the pharmacists to follow. It's already there. These are, each assessment is built as sort of response guided. So it's helping them to have that, like Ben said, a one-stop shop view of what has happened and what is planned to be happening with the patient as we go. So I won't go too far into this, but like I said, we can have those placeholders, and those can be set up based on program requirements. So as if the timeline itself wasn't impressive enough, to me, I think this is quite impressive.
Fantastic.
Each of these elements is retrievable in other reportable ways. So we're gonna hop right into that next. So if you can elaborate a little bit more on some of the other pieces beyond the timeline that you find valuable.
Yeah, thanks, Kristen. Yeah, so beyond the timeline, ScriptMed has the adaptability to scale to the complexity of the pharmacy's needs. So as we know, the complexity of things like clinical care, patient and provider touch points, prior authorizations, financial assistance, all of that increases with complexity as we move from, say, a retail model to a mail order, to specialty, to even an infusion model. In ScriptMed, while it was originally designed as a specialty pharmacy management system, we've been adapting through the years to make sure that we're able to meet all of these different needs and types of clients in an effort to provide that more holistic technology solution for our pharmacy partners. And our reporting solutions are no different, right? Within ScriptMed, we can help our partners not only know what their adherence metrics are, but what drives those barriers, right? Like what makes it so difficult to stay on a medication and make sure you're sticking to that regimen. And that really provides those valuable insights to them and shows them how they can build specific programs and tailor them, on a patient-by-patient basis or even a program basis. So it really helps them and enables them to have those valuable conversations back with the manufacturer partners around therapy value and patient behavior. And Inovalon actually did a case study over a 2-year period, tracking from our More Squared registry database, the top 150 most widely dispensed drugs that we have within ScriptMed. We tracked over 1 million unique prescription fills, and we looked at 130 different numeric and categorical features to track percentage of days covered, or that PDC metric that we were talking about earlier. And what that really allowed us to do as a whole was look at adherence and really begin to create risk stratifications to predict ahead of time how likely a patient is to be adherent to their medication. And when we looked at the results of that study, we found there was a couple factors in particular that really contributes to non-adherence, and we found that be the drug price, first and foremost, but also the package size as well, and the route of administration. As they become a little bit more difficult to administer that drug, that can certainly lead to some non-adherence. So
that's a great study, and certainly has a large sample size there with the larger data set that you guys have. So would you say that you are also able to replicate this, or the pharmacies would be able to replicate this type of analysis on their own data set specific to them?
Absolutely.
If they have ScriptMed?
Yeah, absolutely. So all of our reporting solutions, right, they're kind of out of the box ready and organized based on these specific programs and tailored to the pharmacy's specific needs. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that's amazing. So one of the keys, right? Adherence is great. Knowing how many patients are adherent to a medication, knowing how many are hitting that PDC metric is great. But really the magic when you're filling out an RFP is being able to talk to the patients who are not adherent. And why are they not adherent? Because the question becomes, what programs are you going to build to help those patients who are not adherent, right? Patients who are adherent, great, wonderful. What you're doing is working. But what about those patients that are not adherent? And so being able to get their top 3 reasons specific to them as to why a patient is not adherent would be very valuable. And so the way I see this working is, let's say the RFP is for a new HAE drug. They'd be able to look at all of the HAE drugs they serve today as a whole and be able to do an analysis like that, and then be able to come up with that. But it seems like you guys go a step further, and we'll get into the methodology a little bit here in our conversation to help the pharmacies come up with some of that.
Yeah, and whether you think about it or not, right, Kristen, anytime you go into a pharmacy or a doctor's office, you become a data point.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
And each data point is able to build into the larger set, right, and really help drive the future of healthcare. So I really like this metric this graphic because it helps to show sort of the thought process that we do behind the scenes here at Inovalon. So we take Maya as a data point, for example, and we're able to put her into the larger data set in the aggregate and really start to get her into a patients like me type of category. So other patients may be in the same age range, same disease state of HAE, right, or even the exact same medication. We're able to look at the past experiences of patients like Maya, and based on that history, know how likely, again, we can predict how adherent we think she'll be with this new medication. And what that really allows us to do is provide more targeted programs for her. So again, she's a 19-year-old. She's about to start college. She's been hit with this diagnosis, probably a naive patient, right? So maybe we're seeing that ahead of time, and we're able to target a little bit more of, patient education up front, just to help her get started and really feel like she's going to be able to tackle this disease. So we're able to enroll from there and deliver on that care, I think, is the most important part. But so this is just sort of a little graphic just to demonstrate how that works behind the scenes, because I think data can be overwhelming to a pharmacist, right? So if we're able to take a lot of that and do a lot of the heavy lifting as Inovalon with the ScriptMed data, I think it's really just trying to cut through a lot of that churn and say, this is the important things you need to be focusing on. And this is what you should be focusing on for these patients.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point that we can each become a data point, but also as a pharmacist, I'm putting in data points all day long, right? Or I was. And I'm looking at one patient at a time. I am anecdotally coming up with data in my head as I go, right? Because I might be like remembering a patient from earlier in the day that had a similar thing happen, but I'm not really able to, usually not enough time in my day to go back and collate and figure out what the data means, to your point, right? So to be able to have a large data set like you guys have to pull from to get some directional thought on what I would recommend in my RFP, or to even be able to come to you, it sounds like, to get, hey, I want to recommend this program. Can you help me with whether or not that directionally makes sense.
Sure.
So it sounds to me like this is a great opportunity where a software partner is starting to actually help navigate the pharmacy world that we live and breathe every day, and allowing the pharmacy to do the work they do every day, but collate it in such a way that I can then turn it around and use it for something else.
Yeah.
That's big to me.
Yeah, allow you to focus on,
Focus
what
on
you
what
need
I
to
do.
focus on.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's great. So can you tell us a little bit more about some of the other work that you do and the other work that you focus on in your role?
Yeah, beyond the clinical timeline, it's not the only benefit to ScriptMed when it comes to being able to highlight the work that the staff does on a daily basis for the RFP. So ScriptMed is driven by a highly configurable workflow engine that we call Flow Builder. And that really allows the staff to configure these workflows that best suits the needs of their patients, their providers, and the pharma client. And you can tailor that based on, the staff size, the locations. The flows are built in such a way that it captures that measurable and repeatable data, I think, is the important part too. That can be used to report out on a number of things, such as your turnaround times, time to first therapy, adherence, and more importantly, the outcomes. So in Maya's case, right, each assessment could contain questions about her quality of life while on therapy, and that can all be reported out as a score, for example, if that was needed for the program. The amount and frequency of breakthrough attacks could also be another thing that we're tracking. All of that's very easily reported out. So not only helping the pharmacy staff alert the provider, right, but it's also informing the manufacturer of some post-marketing data points that they could be interested in. So
yeah, it really does help. I've seen this Flow Builder in action. I think it's a little overwhelming when you first look at it, I'll be honest, but it really does help when you talk to the staff here at Inovalon to think through how you would want to see the work flow, for lack of a better word, but that is the right word. It's how you want to see the work flow through the system and present to the user in the way that makes the most sense for the patient and for and to collect the data that you need without making it abrasive to the patient and be just a very robotic, I have to ask you a million questions kind of a thing.
Yeah, we've worked with a number of our pharmacy partners to develop these highly targeted programs. And with the data that's captured from ScriptMed, we can create those pharma extracts that ultimately go back to the manufacturer and report out. So, it allows us to track how these patients are progressing, measure how effective the medications are. And, it could be a clinical adherence extract, for example, that's tracking the specific, breakthrough attacks, changes in symptoms, or even just dispense volumes, right? All of that, our solutions really allow for our customers to track it at scale and have confidence that their patient populations are being served and we're maintaining compliance with the programs. Because I think it's one thing to win the contract, but to sustain it.
That's right.
And maintain compliance to build that partnership like we were talking about and really set yourself up to be more strategically aligned moving forward.
Yeah, and I think showing that at scale also helps with that partnership we were talking about in the beginning to be able to demonstrate that, they'll be able to keep pace with the other items in the pipeline. I didn't mention this on the last slide. I'll go back one real quick if I can. I didn't mention this on the last slide, but I do love the methodology laid out here. And the reason why I like it is the other question I was surprised when I started working with RFPs that was asked. I guess I was surprised. I think I was only surprised because I was a pharmacist and I hadn't been looking at RFPs before, but I was surprised at how much they ask you about the methodology behind your data. And they really want to get very detailed in how the data is pulled. It's not just how do you measure PDC, it's how is the methodology working? And so to see a partner, a software partner, providing such a clear explanation of some of the methodology is very helpful because that was difficult to get in the past for me in my examples. So yeah, so I think that partnership, like we were talking about, going back to that is truly important for the longevity.
Sure. Yeah, that's what it's built on. Right? You need to make sure that there's a working relationship there and that the manufacturer can trust you and you can trust the manufacturer. So, you're expected to deliver the right care, But whenever you're able to partner with the manufacturer, working side by side and reporting back all of these post-marketing data points, process improvements, maybe financial barriers, right, the patient might be having. I think that really helps to improve and inform some of that future thinking,
Yes.
As we look forward with that. So it's really where you see all the stakeholders starting to work together for the betterment of tomorrow in the future of medicine.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you so much for doing this with me. I think it's been a great conversation. I always learn a lot when I sit with you. I've learned a lot in my last year here. At a recent conference, I did see this quote, and I thought it was really insightful. So now more than ever in healthcare, we need to be thinking about what we can differentiate in the business model and how we can leverage technology to help us deliver the best possible care with the least amount of overall cost into the healthcare system. I don't think that's news to anybody, but I do think it's quite insightful. We can't be everything to everyone. We do have to be picky about how we approach every partnership that we have and what we're going to put out there. And I think that's where the pharmacies have to get very specific about when they're filling out RFPs. That's how you differentiate yourself in this sea of sameness. Is we have to be very picky about what we're going to put out there as this is our stake in the ground. And having a system that empowers you to keep track of the work that you do while you do it, then you'll have time to deliver the care that you need while also then being able to demonstrate it later. So that, to me, is the power of what we're talking about here. I could just keep doing all of the clinical great work that I'm doing, and because I don't have to worry about trying to keep track of it or how it's collating, I have the empathy, I have the energy to deliver that care with empathy still, because I'm not trying to figure out how I'm going to still capture it all later. So I think that's really, really great. And I love being on this side of things to help continue to build out that partnership. So if you haven't, I think things are closing down out there, but if you haven't seen a demo of the product or if you haven't seen the timeline up close, reach out to Ben and I. We are certainly happy to share it with you. We do have some time left. We got through that quite fast. I hope we weren't talking too fast. But if you have any questions, I think now is the time to go ahead and ask those.